That dog goes, or this cafe shuts down. The health inspector's voice was cold, final. Sarah Foster, 42, manager of the Daily Grind Cafe, looked at the aging veteran, his loyal service dog, then back at the inspector. In that moment, she made a choice that would ignite a firestorm. The Daily Grind, nestled in the heart of Oakwood, a stone's throw from Marine Corps Base Fort Valor, wasn't just a coffee shop, it was a sanctuary. Sarah, a widow whose late husband, Captain Mark Foster, had been killed in action 6 years prior, poured her life into making it so. She knew every regular, especially the veterans who frequented the place. Every Wednesday, she hosted Heroes Hour, offering free coffee and a space where unspoken understanding flowed as freely as the dark roast. It wasn't about fancy lattes, it was about community, about a quiet respect that soothed old wounds. Her late husband's photo, smiling in his civvies, hung above the counter, a constant reminder of the sacrifices made and the quiet strength of those who served. Sarah understood their silences, their burdens, their need for a place where they could simply be. It was a crisp Wednesday morning, sunlight painting long shadows across Oakwood's Main Street. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee for Heroes Hour filled the Daily Grind. Regulars chatted softly, the clinking of mugs a familiar rhythm. Sarah, sleeves rolled up, a warm smile for every face, was in her element. Ray McMillan, a quiet ex-Marine in his late 50s, entered, his black Labrador German Shepherd mix, Shadow, by his side. Shadow wore a bright red vest, service dog. Do not pet. Ray was a newer face at Heroes Hour, a man of few words, but his presence spoke volumes. Sarah waved him to his usual table by the window. Then, the atmosphere shifted. A man in a severe navy blazer, clipboard clutched like a weapon, strode in. His name tag read, James Peterson, State Health Inspector. An unannounced inspection. Peterson moved with an air of detached authority, his gaze sweeping the cozy cafe with a critical eye, tapping surfaces, checking labels. And then he saw Shadow. He stopped short. That animal, he declared loudly, his voice slicing through the quiet hum, pointing an accusatory finger at the calm service dog, is in direct violation of State Health Code Section 4, subsection B. No animals permitted where food is served. Heads turned. Conversations died. The warmth in the room seemed to curdle. Ray McMillan stiffened, his hand tightening around his coffee mug. Shadow, ever stoic, merely looked up at Ray, awaiting a cue. Sarah stepped out from behind the counter, her demeanor calm but firm. Sir, he's a registered service dog, she explained, her voice even. Federal and state disability laws permit his presence here to assist Mr. McMillan. Inspector Peterson's frown deepened. I don't care what kind of vest it's wearing, ma'am. It's an animal. Hair, dander, saliva, it's a food safety hazard. This is a place of business, not a kennel. Unless you want this cafe facing immediate sanctions, that dog needs to leave. Now. The air grew thick with unspoken resentment. From across the room, a Vietnam vet muttered, for crying out loud. Sarah took a slow, deliberate breath. She looked at Ray, his face etched with a quiet humiliation, then at Shadow, lying faithfully at his feet. She met Peterson's cold gaze. I will not ask a veteran to leave this cafe, and I certainly won't ask his service dog to leave either, sir. They are welcome here. You are free to write your report, but you'll do so knowing you attempted to publicly shame a man who served this country. Peterson's jaw clenched, his face flushing. Just as he opened his mouth to retort, another figure appeared in the doorway, Eleanor Vance, the crisp, no-nonsense regional manager for the Daily Grind's parent company, clearly arrived early for a routine check-in. She'd witnessed the entire exchange, her expression hardening with every word Sarah spoke. Sarah Foster. Vance's voice was like chipped ice. You have just flagrantly violated direct company policy and health compliance regulations in front of a state official. Pack your personal belongings. You're terminated. Effective immediately. Gasps rippled through the cafe. Sarah simply untied her apron with trembling fingers, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. She whispered to Lena, the young barista, "Make sure Ray gets his refill," then walked out into the morning sun, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. But someone in the cafe, seeing an injustice, had already pressed record on their phone. For a full 30 minutes after Sarah's departure, the daily grind remained suspended in disbelief. Customers spoke in hushed whispers, some leaving their coffee untouched. Ray McMillan sat frozen, Shadow's head resting in his boots. The health inspector, Peterson, scribbled furiously on his clipboard, while regional manager Vance made a series of curt phone calls, her face a mask of managerial displeasure. Lena, the young barista Sarah had mentored, her hands shaking almost imperceptibly, kept the coffee brewing. She later confessed, "I didn't know what to say or do, but I knew Sarah wouldn't want us to just stop. She'd want us to keep serving." The video of Sarah's stand and subsequent firing, however, was already making its way through Oakwood's tight-knit community and beyond, uploaded with a title that screamed injustice, "Local cafe manager fired for defending veteran and service dog." Likes, shares, and outraged comments began to multiply with astonishing speed, particularly among the Fort Valor military families and veteran networks. The digital spark had been lit. Then, a low, guttural rumble began to permeate the tense silence of the cafe. It started subtly, like distant thunder, growing steadily louder, closer. Coffee cups vibrated on saucers. The large plate glass windows of the daily grind began to hum. Patrons looked up, alarmed, then craned their necks towards Main Street. Through the morning haze, a formidable sight materialized. For military Humvees, their heavy tires thrumming against the asphalt, rolled into view, their imposing presence undeniable. They navigated the turn into the cafe's parking lot with slow, deliberate precision, forming a protective cordon across its front. Onlookers from nearby shops emerged, their phones instantly raised. Doors palavras synchronously, and out stepped Colonel Marcus Thorne, commanding officer of the nearby Marine Corps base Fort Valor. He was in full dress blues, his uniform immaculate, gold buttons gleaming, his numerous ribbons a testament to a long and distinguished career. His expression was unreadable, a mask of military composure. Behind him, 24 Marines disembarked, forming up in perfect, disciplined ranks on the sidewalk, their presence a silent, powerful statement. Inside the cafe, Inspector Peterson's pen froze mid-sentence. Regional Manager Vance's jaw dropped. The bell above the daily grind's door jingled as Colonel Thorne entered alone, his polished boots striking the tiled floor with a rhythmic, authoritative cadence that echoed through the stunned silence. He surveyed the room, his gaze lingering for a moment on Lena, then settling on Ray McMillan, who had slowly risen to his feet. Their eyes met, a silent exchange of understanding between servicemen. The colonel offered a subtle, respectful nod, which Ray returned. I am State Health Inspector Peterson," the inspector stammered, his earlier arrogance deflated. This establishment was in violation. Colonel Thorne cut him off, not with a raised voice, but with an icy calm that was far more unnerving. "Inspector, you don't need to know a man's rank or history to afford him basic human dignity, especially when he served this nation." He turned to Lena. "Is Sarah Foster here?" Lena shook her head, her voice small. She was fired, sir. For letting Mr. McMillan and Shadow stay." A muscle tightened in Thorne's jaw. "That woman," he said, his voice resonating with controlled power, "has done more for the morale and well-being of the Marines and families of Fort Valor with her kindness than most official programs combined. She offered my Marines a place to feel human again when they came home broken. She treated a decorated Marine veteran with the respect this nation promised him." Ray McMillan cleared his throat. She just poured coffee, Colonel. And let Shadow sit. First time in years I didn't feel watched. Judged." Colonel Thorne nodded curtly. He then turned to the Marines arrayed outside and gave a single, sharp gesture. 2 Marines entered, strode behind the counter, and respectfully removed the corporate, The Daily Grind, logo sign. Another pair brought in a newly painted wooden sign, Sarah's Place, Honor Served Daily. When Eleanor Vance started to protest, Colonel Thorne fixed her with a steely gaze. "Ma'am, you've made your corporate decision. Now, we're making ours." As the impromptu renaming ceremony concluded, Lena's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, her eyes widening. It's an official message from Fort Valor Public Affairs, she announced, her voice trembling slightly. It says, "Ms. Sarah Foster is requested to report to Colonel Thorne at base headquarters as soon as possible." The remaining patrons and even the chastened Inspector Peterson stared. The regional manager, Eleanor Vance, looked apoplectic but remained silent, aflush with impotent fury. Meanwhile, Sarah Foster was sitting in her small pickup truck in her driveway, keys still in the ignition, the engine cold. The events of the morning replayed in her mind, the confrontation, the cold finality of Vance's words, the quiet shame of walking out. Her phone buzzed. It was Lena, her voice a torrent of excited, jumbled words about Humvees, Marines, a new sign, and a summons. A summons? To Fort Valor? Sarah's mind raced. Was this a reprimand from a higher authority? Or something else entirely? She thought of her late husband, Mark, of his unwavering dedication to the Corps. With a deep breath that did little to calm the sudden thrumming in her chest, she started the engine and drove towards the imposing gates of Fort Valor, a place she knew both as a supportive Marine wife and now, as a civilian facing an unknown future. The atmosphere at Fort Valor's headquarters was one of disciplined energy. Colonel Thorne met Sarah at the entrance, his demeanor now less imposing, more thoughtful. He wasn't in his dress blues but in his daily working uniform. "Sarah," he said, extending a hand, his voice unexpectedly gentle. "Thank you for coming. There's something I want to show you." He led her through corridors lined with honors and history, stopping before a set of double doors marked with a temporary sign, Veteran Transition and Wellness Initiative, Prop. Inside was a large, mostly empty space. A few ajar boxes of unassembled furniture, some rolled-up yoga mats, and a pallet of unopened computers hinted at a project stalled in its infancy. "This," Colonel Thorne began, gesturing expansively, "is a pilot program we've been trying to launch for nearly 2 years. The funding is there, the need is undeniable. We have Marines returning from deployment, veterans in our community, struggling with the invisible wounds of service. They need more than just clinical help, they need a place to connect, to decompress, to find their footing again." He paused, his gaze direct. "The challenge, Sarah, has been finding the right person to lead it. Someone who doesn't just understand veterans from a textbook, but from the heart. Someone who knows how to build a sanctuary." Sarah looked around the bare room, a dawning understanding mixing with disbelief. "Colonel, I appreciate what you're saying, but I managed a café. I'm not a therapist, I don't have a degree in social work." "No," Colonel Thorne agreed, a faint smile playing on his lips. "You don't have those specific degrees. What you do have, Sarah, is a proven track record of creating exactly what these men and women need. Your café wasn't just about coffee, it was about dignity. It was a lifeline. The outpouring of support for you today, from active duty Marines to community veterans, wasn't just about a dog. It was about what you represent." Just then, a young woman, perhaps in her late 20s, hesitantly approached the open doorway. She wore civilian clothes, long sleeves pulled down over her hands, and a small, nervous-looking golden retriever puppy with an in-training vest sat by her side. "Excuse me, Colonel," she said shyly. Is this Mrs. Foster?" Her eyes, when they met Sarah's, were filled with a fragile hope. "I'm Tiffany. I saw the video from the café this morning. I haven't been able to go into a public place like that since I got back. But, if you were running a place, I think I could." The simple, heartfelt words struck Sarah more profoundly than any official commendation could. She saw in Tiffany's eyes the same vulnerability, the same unspoken need she'd seen in so many veterans at the daily grind. Colonel Thorne seized the moment. "Sarah, we'd like to offer you the position of director of this Veteran Wellness Center. Full autonomy to shape its programs, its culture. You build the space, you hire your team. You already know what works: community, routine, unwavering respect, a damn good cup of coffee, and the understanding that sometimes, the best healing happens in comfortable silence, maybe with a good dog nearby." Sarah looked from Tiffany and her puppy to the earnest, determined face of Colonel Thorne, then around the empty room, suddenly seeing not bare walls, but possibilities. A new, larger mission. A way to honor Mark's memory on a scale she'd never imagined. Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes, Colonel," she said, her voice thick with emotion but steady. "Yes, I'll do it." Sarah Foster poured her soul into the Fort Valor Veteran Wellness Center, transforming the empty space into a beacon of hope. She brought the spirit of the daily grind, now affectionately nicknamed Sarah's Place by the base community, to this new, larger stage. Comfortable armchairs replaced ajar boxes, a state-of-the-art coffee station became its warm heart, and a large whiteboard invited veterans to share needs and offer support. Need a ride? Who's good at fixing carburetors? Quiet corner for study available. Service dogs were not just permitted, they were welcomed with open water bowls. She hired veterans as peer counselors, organized workshops on everything from resume writing to mindfulness, and ensured there was always a quiet space for those who just needed to sit and breathe. Initial skepticism from some base administrators, accustomed to more rigid, clinical approaches, soon melted away as they witnessed the tangible results: veterans re-engaging, finding camaraderie, and taking crucial steps towards healing. Her consistency and kindness, as one once critical auditor later noted, proved more effective than a dozen bureaucratic manuals. The center thrived, its success becoming a talking point for potential expansion. Months later, an official-looking envelope arrived. Sarah, alongside Colonel Thorne, was summoned to Washington, D.C. She had been nominated for the National Civilian Commendation for Distinguished Service to Veterans. The invitation included a request to speak at the annual National Veterans Advocacy Conference. Standing on that grand stage, with Ray McMillan in his dress blues sitting proudly in the front row as her informal escort, Sarah felt a universe away from the small-town cafe manager who'd been fired for her convictions. Her voice, though initially trembling, gained strength as she spoke not of policy or programs, but of shared humanity. "I'm not a general or a politician," she began, her gaze sweeping across the packed ballroom. "I just managed a cafe. I served coffee, I listened, and I learned that dignity is a language everyone understands, especially those who have fought for ours." She recounted the incident with Inspector Peterson, not with bitterness, but as a turning point. "That day, I was fired for what some called a minor infraction. But it was never just about a health code, or a dog, or even a cup of coffee. It was about respect. It was about seeing the person behind the uniform, behind the scars, visible or not. It was about choosing compassion over compliance when the two seemed at odds." Her heartfelt words resonated deeply, earning a thunderous standing ovation. Back at the Fort Valor Wellness Center, now a vibrant hub of activity and healing, Sarah felt a profound sense of peace. The cafe's spirit hadn't been extinguished by her firing. It had merely been replanted in richer soil, its branches reaching further than she could have ever imagined. On the center's main wall, alongside photos of veterans engaged in various activities, she placed a small, framed motto: "Legacy isn't what we build for ourselves. It's what we protect in others." One quiet afternoon, a young Marine, fresh from his first challenging deployment, hesitated at the center's open door, his eyes full of an old uncertainty. Sarah approached him with her familiar, warm smile. "Welcome," she said gently. "This is the place for people like all of us." Her circle of care, once defined by the cozy confines of a cafe, was now boundless, a testament to the enduring power of one principled stand. Sarah's incredible journey from a cafe manager to a national advocate for veterans shows the power of standing up for what's right. If her story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe for more touching stories. What act of quiet courage have you witnessed? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below.